Okay, I think we've got it now. Thank you for your patience while we just have these little technical glitches. I'm going to bring in Catherine. All right, Catherine, I'm going to hand over to you. Except we're looking at your computer, not mine. Catherine, is your microphone working? Can you speak? If not, we'll just have to move on anyway.
Hi,
No.
Nick.
Oh, you're there.
Hi. Yeah, can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I can, thank you.
Oh, can you? Oh, that's okay. I'm sorry. Can you, what screen can you see?
Oh, it's the correct screen.
Your screen?
Yep.
Oh, fabulous. Okay. Sorry, everybody. Welcome tonight. Thank you for attending. Well, not thank you. Congratulations on putting aside this time. And welcome to the Property Club's special webinar this evening, where we'll be talking about unlocking the power of your SMSF, which is Self-Managed Super Fund. So we're really happy to be hosting it tonight, and so many of you have registered and showed interest. So it's just showing us how important this subject is in the marketplace right now. We are really privileged to have Kevin Young, our founder and director of the Property Club, who's joining us tonight, and he's going to say a few words, I believe. He's a retired self-made millionaire at the age of 27. I say retired, but he works really hard. He works with us and he mentors us, and we really appreciate him. He's got over 50 years of experience in property investment. He's the founder of the Investors Club, which is now the Property Club. The club actually offers free membership and services, and we mentor our members, we educate, and we help them build wealth, supporting them every step of the journey. Look, Kevin's got a proven retirement strategy which has helped thousands and thousands of property investors, and over 5,000 become property millionaires. He's actually now, his goal is to look for the next 5,000 property millionaires. So we'd love you to be one of those. So without further ado, I'll invite Kevin. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Catherine. And for those who don't know Catherine, she has a huge work ethic and loves property like we all do, and has a keen desire to help people. And if you look at her qualifications, it's a long, long, long list. She's very qualified to help people along the road to become a millionaire. Now, I love property. I love helping people get rich, so I've got the best job in the world. For free, I take you along the road to become a wealthy millionaire. and then I'll enjoy sailing around Australia with you, or going overseas with you, or helping your children become millionaires early. And wouldn't you have loved to have got this information we're giving out when you're 18 and 19, or even better, when you're in high school? They should be teaching this sort of stuff. I'm going to thank Nick Lockhart for giving his time tonight and organising this. And as you can tell from in the background, there was a lot of things going wrong. In the nick of time, we just got there. In the nick of time, thank you, Nick. I've known Nick for, I think, a good over 20 years. He's an extremely accomplished real estate expert, 25 years experience in the game. And having known him for that length of time, I know he's a ferret. He really wants to get the nitty-gritty of something and really know it back to front, and then has the ability, a rare ability, to be able to convey that in simple words that people can understand. So he's a huge asset. And tonight you'll be learning a lot from him that a lot of people would make it sound very convoluted and complex and stuff. Not Nick. So look forward to a good night tonight, learning a lot about making money and keeping your money. And Nick has taught me. So Nick, I will pass over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. Much appreciated. What I'll do is I'll just mute you. So if you want to cough and splutter in the background, that'll be okay.
Okay.
Let me see. Actually, I'll let Catherine do that because she's an organizer as well. So if you could just mute Kevin, that would be great, Catherine. Thanks. All right, well, that's me. I'm going to apologize in advance for some of the formatting of my presentation. As you can see, you know, the bullet points and that are a little bit out. I'm a bit anal about getting that correct. I've been working on this presentation for about 4 days, and just before lunch today, I saved it, but I accidentally saved over it. I lost everything. And I thought, I was so stressed. I jumped in my car and I went and got a quick lunch. I thought I'll just get a quick bite to eat and I'll be back and I'll be working right through till 7 o'clock. And I did. I got in the car and I went to where I was, and the car wouldn't bring me home. So it's still at the shopping center, and I Ubered it, and I've been rebuilding my presentation ever since. So here we go. Tonight we're going to discover an alternative superannuation strategy for retiring wealthy without having to sell your investment properties. And unfortunately, a lot of people do have to sell their properties because while they can manage the debt while they're working, when they're not working, the rental income is needed to support those properties and there's nothing to live on. So they turn around and sell and lose 25% in capital gains tax. So in our presentation tonight, we're going to cover what is SMSF and how it works, the benefits and risks, how to go about setting it up, the legal and regulatory requirements, investing your funds and how to go about that, taxation and reporting, tips for best practices, etc. We'll look at some Q&As, and we're going to email you a survey at the end. And I'm also going to give you an opportunity. I don't know if I've got the handout. Let me see. I was trying to get a handout. Yes. Do I? No. All right. I was trying to get a handout. Catherine, I don't know if you have access to the GoToWebinar platform and you could put the wealth creation form in. If you don't know how to do it, then don't worry. We will soldier on anyway. So tonight what we're going to do is we want to look at the what, the how, and the why. What is about taking control of your retirement funds, ensuring that you have enough to support the desired lifestyle that you want. How is learning from experts, and I suggest that you do leverage off 30 years of success that the Property Club has demonstrated since Kevin founded it in 1994, and utilizing a little known SMSF strategy that could potentially help you retire wealthy, as I said, while keeping your investment properties. And why would you do that? Well, so that you can retire in style. Who wants to be broke on a pension, not being able to hang out with the grandkids and do fun things? So the motivation and the why for doing stuff should be a positive. However, if you can't get excited about what could be, then this little chart should cause a little bit of concern. Can you afford to retire? Now, this was put together back some years ago. And as you can see, the prediction for inflation in 2023 was low with a question mark because it was an estimate. But even if we did have low inflation from 2013 right through to 2053, look at what you need in order to be able to survive. 7.3 million for a dwelling, which was 18,000 back at Christmas 73. The basic cost of living, 2,400 a week. Now, I suspect those figures will be worse because we've gone through some really record inflation times, which is not good for people who save or people who haven't invested, but for people who've got borrowed money, it's a fantastic thing that could happen. The information that we covered tonight is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. I'm going to share some of my thoughts, ideas, and opinions, but nothing that I share is to be taken as financial advice. And the information that I do share is all based on publicly available facts that you can get from the ATO website, APRA's website, and so forth. Very quickly, I am going to get you to take a poll. I'm going to send you a poll. You can see what the question is there. Okay, I'm going to launch the poll. There you go. You've got just a few seconds if you could just answer that. Okay, we've got 75% have voted so far and 95% have answered in the negative, saying no, you do not think that it's possible to save and pay cash for a house, and I would concur with that. Okay, let's look at this one. Let's send another poll. Whoop. Okay, we'll launch this one. Whoops, I think I hit close too quickly. Sorry, I did. I've got to do that one again. I've stuffed it because I closed the poll before you guys could answer. But you can see the issue is if you can't save to buy a family home because you're fighting the forces of inflation and that inflation's working against you harder than you can save, then why do we think we can go through our working lives saving for retirement and get to the end and not think that inflation is going to have decimated our retirement? Most people, the reality is most people do not support themselves in retirement. They're on a pension. This little chart here shows the movement of house prices. I'm on a Mac, they're so sensitive. When do you think is the best time to buy? We don't want to be buying up here, do we, at the top of a market and then watching the value of our asset go down. But what we find is a lot of people get quite nervous when the value of properties do go down and they fail to see it as a buying opportunity. And they snooze and lose. Before they know it, the market has shot off again. This is where we are in 2023. The market is pretty low and the indicators are that with the Reserve Bank raising interest rates, etc., and the economy the way it is, investors are pulling out of the market. The unlearned ones are pulling out of the market. A lot of renters are deferring buying their first home, and even some first homeowners are in mortgage stress and they're not wanting to buy. So all of this is going to put a lot of pressure on rentals, and it's going to drive the price of rental properties even higher. As the yields get up, the demand for those properties does too. So the $64,000 question is, do you know how to unlock the power of your super, or is it just something that's there in the background and you hope one day it might be worth something to you? I've got some clients that have said to me over the years that they've never taken so much interest in what their super is worth until they started managing it themselves. They said they'd go for years and years and never look at it. They'd get a statement once a year and they'd have a look and shove it in the drawer. But as soon as they started managing it themselves, they became really quite excited about it. Well, that's hard to read. What is a self-managed super fund? You can't read that, and I can hardly read it either. It's a private superannuation fund that enables its members to manage their own retirement savings. Trustees are responsible for making the investment decisions and complying with the legislation, and all members will be a trustee of the fund, or they will be a director of the company that is the corporate trustee. The benefits are that it gives you greater control. You get to choose what you're going to buy with your superannuation, when you buy, when you enter the market, when you exit the market. If you sell, that's all your decision. You've got a wider range of investment assets that you can look at, such as real estate, direct real estate. You can look at digital assets. You can look at precious metals. You can look at the stock market. Be careful. There's some significant cost savings because you can have up to 4 members. And when you see the cost of running an SMSF, it's really quite affordable, even if it's one person. But those costs can be divided between 4 people. Because it's a trust, you can create all sorts of strategies for handing on your assets to your loved ones. And it provides a very, 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 very powerful, little known tool for people to kill their debt in retirement. So why have a self-managed super fund? Control, as I mentioned, 4 members, so you can get together and you can pool your resources. You know, you need about 135,000 in a super fund to get in a $500,000 asset. 4 young people could do that. 4 young people with hardly any super going nowhere. Imagine if they bought, set up a self-managed super fund and bought a $500,000 property. You could have bought a house in Brisbane a couple of years ago, and what would that be worth now? 750 or something. They'd be laughing. Members have control over the investment strategy. All right, I think that's the same slide information that was on that one. Anyway, I told you I was in a rush this afternoon. If we break up superannuation and say all of the super in Australia, where is it? Well, almost a third of it is in self-managed superannuation now. And in my previous presentation that I lost, I had some statistics showing that SMSFs had outperformed retail and industry funds. But you can get all those figures yourselves. Now, these are just some infographics that are available from the ATO. And all I wanted to do was point out that there's a lot of information, and when you sit down and look at it, you will see that the balance of male funds and female funds between the tax year 2019-20 through to 2020 and 21 increased by, I think it was 110, 135,000 respectively. How many other people's super funds would have done that? I mean, obviously if they're high net worth and they're putting a lot in it, but this is an average right across the board. The SMSF structure. You can have between 1 and 4 members, and as I said, each member must be a trustee, or if you have a corporate company trustee, all members become a director. And no trustee is allowed to charge the super fund a fee for the time they put into doing anything they do, looking after the fund. But the structure when buying property is really, it's not difficult, but you have 2 trusts and 2 corporate structures. One trust up here is the super fund. It is the beneficial owner. But because super funds cannot borrow money, we can set up what's called a holding trust. And the holding trust becomes the legal owner and holds the asset while ever there's a debt. That's called the superannuation trust. This is called a bare trust. Above each trust, you have a trustee, usually a company. So you'd have a corporate trustee above here and a corporate trustee above your holding trust. Here's the property that's purchased. The super fund pays the deposit. The lender pays the 70, 80, whatever percentage of the loan it is that you've borrowed. The rental income from the property, goes straight back to the super fund, and the super fund picks up the costs. The holding trust simply holds the asset, and the bank has recourse over that asset only and over nothing else in the super fund. The holding trust is also the holder of the debt. And as soon as the loan is paid out, the holding trust must be wound up and the beneficial owner takes control of the whole thing. You only have a bare trust while there are borrowings involved. The benefits for buying in super is that there's the limited recourse borrowing arrangement. That's what I just said before, where the bank only has recourse against the asset that is being borrowed against. If you had $100,000 sitting in your super fund, they don't have access to that. They will make you as a director sign a director's guarantee, however, to try to go after you if you default, but they can't go after your super fund. It is protected for your retirement purposes. You have rental income, and the rent and the tax man alone should pay most, if not all, of the costs associated with the property. So you can have really fast loan repayments if you start to introduce your employer contributions or salary sacrificing. It's all tax-free in retirement. Once you're 60 and retired, you can move $1.6 million worth of your assets from what's called the accumulation phase to the pension phase. Put simply, you don't pay tax on it. So if you've got a house, the house could be put in the pension phase and you can take the income tax-free from super, or you could sell it and bring the money back into the super fund and take it personally tax-free. So some great benefits. The biggest downside with owning real estate is the whole capital gains tax. And that's why I love Kevin's retirement strategy so much, because he teaches how to not sell your property so that you never pay that tax. But if you get to retirement and you haven't structured yourself correctly and you're carrying too much debt, you might be forced into a position where you have to retire if you haven't got an alternative strategy. You can leverage your property and equity, leveraged profits and equity can be used to offset personal debt in retirement. So you can pull all of the profits out of your super fund and just use it to offset your personal debt in retirement. I'm not going into estate planning, but there's some very, very effective estate planning you can do in super. At the end of the night, we're going to it'll probably be tomorrow, we'll email you what's called a wealth assessment form. And that wealth assessment form, if you would fill that in and return it, we will give you a complimentary, no obligation assessment of what may be possible for you in super. So we'll organise that and send it out to you. I was hoping to have a downloadable file tonight, but it didn't happen, sorry. So your SMSF, and this is going to get really good now. Your SMSF right now, well, you don't have an SMSF potentially, but the funds you've got in super on your own with your partner or with your partner and two children over 18, with you, the milkman, the baker, and the neighbour. It doesn't matter who it is. You can have any 4 people. If you've got an investment philosophy and strategy that is conducive with each other, you can pool your resources or go it alone, and potentially you could own a brand new home like one of these, or a townhouse, or a unit in Perth. Now, time didn't permit to do cash flows on all these properties, but the unit in Perth would be $43 a week positive after all costs. So the super fund pays a 30% deposit, borrows 70%. The tenant and the taxman pay all of the outgoings, and there's 43 bucks coming back into the super fund in change. How good's that? Here's a house in Perth, brand new home, 4-bedder, $27 a week positive. I mean, even if it was $27 a week negative, that would be good. And what I haven't told you is that all of these figures are calculated with a principal and interest loan, not an interest only. This is a 30-year principal and interest loan where you are smashing the debt and your super fund will own the asset outright in 30 years' time. Now, rhetorical question, but how many times will that property double in 30 years? I would say conservatively, I would be very, very comfortable if it was my investment to have an expectation of 2 doubling cycles, maybe more, depending on inflation. If inflation stays high, the doubling cycle is reduced. You know, a property will double in 7 years in high inflation and might take 12 to 15 years in low inflation, which is why investors love inflation. So imagine owning inside your super fund a 4-bedroom house that didn't cost you anything, and you didn't need your employer contributions, and you didn't need to salary sacrifice at all, because the rent from the tenant and the taxman savings covers all the outgoings. Imagine for a moment if you then added those other amounts to the property, whether it was into an offset account against the principal of the loan, or you literally just dropped it into the principal of the loan and smashed it. If you used your employer contributions, and once again, depends if it's one of you in the super fund or 4 of you in the super fund. Because if there's 4 of you in the super fund and all 4 of you are putting your employer contributions into the loan, my goodness, you're going to own that thing in no time at all. Probably before the paint's dry, not quite. But it is very, very possible for a couple who purchase property in super with a 70% loan to pay that thing off completely in under 10 years. So if you are 55 and you've had the wake up call, oh crap, I've only got 10 years left till I retire, How am I going to do it? Well, I would suggest you buy some investment properties in your own name if you haven't already done that, and ride the growth between now and when you do retire. And if you have to keep working for a few more years to pick the time when the market, is favorable, so be it. Instead of working for 10 years, work for 13 if you have to. But if you also purchased in your super fund, and remember, you and your super fund are not the same. If you don't have a borrowing capacity, it doesn't mean your super fund doesn't have one, and vice versa. Because your super fund is assessed as an entity. You are assessed as a separate entity, just like your neighbor. If you and your neighbor are both buying properties and you both go to the same lender, they assess you separately. Your neighbor doesn't need to include your income and vice versa. Well, your super fund has an income. It doesn't need your income. So if you do direct the employer contributions and you did pay off this property in under 10 years and you were 55, and this property took 12 years to double, you'd be 67. That property it's probably, I don't know, a $700,000 property. So you would own close to $1.5 million worth of real estate in your super fund freehold. And once you're 60 and retired, you can instruct your accountant to convert the asset from the accumulation phase that attracts 15% tax and 10% capital gain after the first year, and tell your accountant to move that asset into the pension fund that attracts 0 capital gain, income tax. And now you could sell that property, pull the $1.5 million out and stick it in offset accounts against the properties in your own name, reducing the debt, making it possible to retire and keep them. Now, that's a broad statement because everyone's situation is uniquely different. But I have sat down and strategized with numerous people over the years and gone through this and shown them, and they've gone away and it's worked for them. As I said at the outset, this is for education and entertainment. I want to challenge paradigms and mindsets. Tonight's about sharing a truth that could liberate you and set you free. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling anybody to set up a self-managed super fund. I'm not telling anybody to buy real estate in super. I'm just wanting to share with you what's possible, because we had about 300 people register for the event. And I will, at a guess, say I would be surprised if 10% of people understood this simple strategy. I've had clients sit with me over the years and tell me, after I've gone through this with them, this penny drops and this aha moment, and they go, you know how much money I've spent with my accountant, my financial advisor, trying to work out super and get my head around it and make sense of it, and it's friggin' too hard and I don't understand it, and it's a pain in the butt. He goes, in half an hour, you have broken it down, simplified it, and showed me how I can parallel invest in another entity. If you can't buy a home to live in through just saving, and you might be able to because you might be wealthy, but most people will never, ever do that. Inflation will defeat them. Well, if leveraging into real estate enabled you to build wealth out of thin air in your own home and in your own investment properties, you've already proven to yourself that real estate is a phenomenal strategy to combat the forces of inflation, make inflation your friend, build wealth passively using other people's money. Why not consider, and I use the word consider because I'm not going to tell you to do it, but why not consider whether that would be a sensible thing to do in Super too? It's if you've got two strategies and one works 10 times better than the other, you probably don't want to do the other. So I've just gone through this strategy myself because it's too hard to read here. We will email this stuff to you, but it's take out a principal and interest loan to clear the debt in 30 years. The rent and the tax savings cover most, if not all, of the property's outgoings. Redirect employer contributions to the loan as well via an offset account or straight into the principal to fast track debt elimination, leaving the property freehold inside of Super in under 10 years. During the 10 years, as the principal component of your loan continues to drop, so will the interest that's owed, meaning an ever increasing portion of the surplus funds are going to be clearing the loan. A $500,000 SMSF property can be secured with as little, roughly $135,000. And we've gone through that example. If the property doubled in 12 years, the super fund would have $1 million worth of asset. If you paid it off in 9 years, the last 3 years before the property doubled, all that money would just be going straight back into your super. You'd be building up cash reserves. You could be buying something else. You could be buying precious metals or literally just saving the money in your super fund. But I just want to get across the incredible power most people are sitting on in their super and they don't know it. It's no different to the power people are sitting on in their family home when they don't use the equity to leverage into more property. The rental income from your super property can be taken tax-free. We've talked about that. And it gives you lifestyle choices in retirement. You purchase with a limited recourse borrowing arrangement. We've covered what that is. Things to be mindful of. Your obligations to pay the loan. I mean, that's the same with anybody who's taken any sort of loan investing. You do have limitations around borrowing. You can't leverage against the equity in a property in super and pull it out to buy another one like you can in your own personal investment strategy. So if you bought a property in super today and it doubled in 10 years and you wanted to use that increased equity to get into a second property, unfortunately, you do have to sell property one, pay capital gains tax at 10%, pull the money back into your super fund and use it to buy multiple properties. We all understand, I assume, what leveraging is. Leveraging is where you take a small amount that you have and instead of going, what can it buy me? You go, what can it buy me as a deposit? So instead of your $100,000 you go, or $200,000, you're going, well, what sort of a property can I get for $200,000? You can leverage it and now control a much more valuable asset. And when that asset grows at 5% or 10% or 12%, your super fund is reaping the 5, 10 or 12% growth on the asset, not on the deposit. So the person who puts $135,000 in to buy a $500,000 property when that property doubles in value, their 135,000 is the 25%. So yeah, it's about 27%, which means they have taken their deposit and multiplied it 4 times effectively. That's the power of leverage. Each asset purchase inside super has its own bare trust or holding trust. So the loan associated to that asset is quarantined. Interest rates are a little bit high, and that's due to the fact that they are limited recourse loans. This is a simple diagram of how it works. You've got the super fund trustee, you've got the super fund, pays interest to the lender. The lender gave the balance of the loan to buy the property. The super fund provided the deposit for the property. The property pays the super fund the rent. The bare trust or the holding trust looks after that until the debt is cleared. Property Club will help guide individuals through the process of purchasing property within a super fund. The experienced team can assist with property selection, structuring, and finance options to help make your investment goals a reality. Of course, we work with industry professionals that we vetted to do the things that we cannot do and we're not licensed to do. If you came to me and you said, do you think I should set up a super fund to invest in property? Is it a good idea? I would have to say to you, you need to go and get independent advice. But if you said to me, Nick, I've done my own research and I want to set up a super fund, then you don't have to go and get advice. It's completely up to you. The key is to make informed decisions because the rewards can be great, really great. So think about what your goals are. How many people are going to go in the fund? The sort of money that will be coming in. Is it just the salary is it just employer contributions, or will there be salary sacrificing? Think about your risk profile, your age, what you're wanting to achieve. And we can help you reverse engineer backwards to see what might work for you. If you want to pay for advice, you can do that, but you can gather the information for free. The problem I have with paid advice is that ASIC will only allow the advice to be given by people who are licensed. Well, that's fair enough. But the license, the restrictions on the license say that you cannot talk about anything or give advice on anything other than the products covered by the license. So AMP financial advisors are covered by AMP's license. And AMP's license has AMP's products. So if you go to an AMP advisor to get independent advice, you're going to get, it's just difficult because the poor guy or girl is not allowed to tell you anything other than the products on their approved list. So you'd have to find an advisor that would be completely independent, maybe had his own license or her own license, charged a fee for service, so they didn't really care what they were recommending, understood property, understood the things we're talking about tonight, and believe me, a lot of them don't. They understand the nuts and bolts of super, but not necessarily the property side of it. So you can navigate the best way you think, but just don't spend all your money in the wrong area, because your super fund is supposed to be there to fund your retirement. And that's what you want it to do. How to set it up: obtain a trust deed, write a basic investment strategy, appoint the trustees or the directors of the company, sign the declarations, tax file numbers, ABN, open a bank account, roll over the money, decide the asset that you want to invest into and move forward. I'm not going to go into too much detail tonight because you'll be here for too long and it gets too boring. If anybody decides that they want to get cracking on this, then we'll go into the detail with those people. Tonight's more of an overview. Costs to set it up. Well, I can get it set up all inclusive for $2,800 including GST, which is 2 trusts and 2 companies. Anyone can charge what they like and they all charge different amounts. Financial planners, accountants, lawyers, they'll all do it. I've heard of people paying 10 grand, 7 grand, 5 grand. Some will tell you that you have to get financial advice and they'll make you go and spend the 5,000 for advice. Then they'll charge you another 5,000 to set it up. No wonder why people don't want to do it. No wonder why people just want to forget about their super. And $1,100 a year for accounting and auditing and your ASIC fees. So that might be more than you're paying at the moment. But if you add all of that up and you look at the fees that you're paying, because you're not paying fees. I mean, you're paying the accountant, but you're not paying fees to someone to administer your fund because you are the administrator or the trustee. So whether you have 1 person or 4 people in the fund, those figures are the same. Now, $2,800 is to set up a super fund with 1 property, and $1,100 is the accounting and auditing with 1 property. If you decided to be a day trader, you could have a small phone book worth of bank statements by the time the year was up, instead of having a 1-page bank statement showing all transactions for the year. And you can on 1 page, there's not many. You've got 12 deposits from the rent, you've got 12 interest payments going out, a couple of maybe council payments, and there's not much else. There's a handful of payments. So there's not much accounting and auditing involved. But don't come back and say, well, it cost me a whole lot more, because if you were buying, selling, trading shares, it is going to cost more. Okay, see if I've got this poll. Yay, it worked. Okay, people are still voting, 44, 45, 50%. This is fun watching it. 58%, oh, up to 60 now. If you're going to vote, do it quickly because I don't want to wait around too long. Okay. We have up to 70%. Okay, we've got 60% saying yes, you comprehend the strategy. 14% have said no, you don't, and 26% want to hear it again. Assuming that my recording worked, which I think it did, you'll get the recording and you can listen to this again. But I think we will talk to you. If you haven't already got a property mentor allocated to you, you'll have one. We will talk to you and we will arrange one-on-one to make sure that every single person has their questions answered and every single one of you is empowered to make an informed decision that is going to best serve your long-term retirement needs. Okay, I'll close that poll at 72% of the votes. Thanks for your participation. You'll hear a lot of people tell you that it's not cost effective, yada, yada, blah, 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 and you can't have a super fund unless you've got so much money. You can set up a self-managed super fund with, if you've got $4.50 in it. You'd be an idiot, but you can. There is no limit or restriction, no minimum as to how much you can have. It's up to you. but there are costs, and the costs tend to be more fixed as opposed to your traditional funds. It's a percentage under management. So if you've only got 50,000 in super, you're only getting charged a fee on that 50,000. If you rolled it into an SMSF, you're still paying 1,100 or whatever. You're paying accounting and auditing. So the key is not what it costs you, but where are you going to be? So don't look at it from the front end and go, well, what's it going to cost to set up a super fund? The costs are borne by the fund, by the way, not you. So look at it and go, where am I going to be in my retirement if I do strategy A, B, C, D, or E? Now, you might not have 5 strategies. You might only have the one you've got and the one we talked about tonight. Just simply look at the options that are available to you and what the likely outcome is. I might be biased. I am biased because I love real estate. I was a financial planner 20-something years ago, and I got out of it because I was telling so many people. I worked for Westpac, and I used to tell people to go and leverage off their home and buy more investment property, and I'd sell them life insurance so that they protected in their assets, but I never sold them traditional super or savings plans or any of that stuff because I don't believe in them. This is my opinion, by the way. It's not advice because I'm not an advisor anymore, but my personal opinion back then is the same as it is now. I love real estate, residential real estate, because people need a home to go home to at night. I love residential real estate in capital cities where the population is growing, where there's infrastructure, demand is great, supply is low. There might be an Olympic Games coming up or something like that. But look at the opportunity, and if it's going to be worthwhile, who cares what it costs? I'll pay you $10,000 to give me advice tomorrow if that advice is going to make me 100. So that's the way I would go about it. There were some changes to SMSF legislation a few years ago. It affected how much you can put in at the front end. The government just tightened the screws because whatever you get into super, you can pull out at the back end tax-free. So superannuation is a really, really good vehicle for building wealth. However, I think leverage is the most powerful vehicle or the most powerful way to build wealth. So if you can combine superannuation and leverage, you turbocharge it, in my opinion. So let's keep moving. Before setting up a self-managed super fund, you just get the right knowledge, whether you pay for it or you don't pay for it. Be fully informed and get the facts, not just someone's opinion. And I am giving you my opinions tonight, but I'm pretty excited about them because I've seen them working. You don't let ignorance cost you. The minute the penny drops, with just about every person I've shared this strategy with, they want to do it. If they can, and they not all can, but if they can, they want to. And the only reason they hadn't done it sooner is they didn't understand it. In conclusion, we hope you have a better understanding of self-managed super funds, how they can benefit you. As I said, the information tonight was all freely available on the ATO and APRA's website, other than the fact that I love property, they won't say that. Identifying your goals, talk to someone who's going to look out for your back. So, how can we help you to retire comfortably and keep your investment properties? That's the question I'm going to leave with you tonight. And you can email us at propertyclub.com.au. Speak with your property mentor and look out for the survey that GoToWebinar platform should send after this. And please just take a moment just to let us know. Our goal is to help you where you are. So there are 3 groups of people who heard tonight's information. One who say, I'm really excited and I want to do something with my superannuation. We don't want to neglect you. We want to get together and we want to point you in the right direction and show you what to do next. The second group are those who say, you've piqued my interest, but there was a lot of information to take in. I'm a little bit confused, but I'm not going to walk away from this just yet. I'm not making any commitments, but I would like to speak with someone to answer my questions who can help me. And then the third group are those who say, hey, thanks for the information tonight. I appreciate it, but it's not for me at this time, or possibly it's not for you at all. And when we send you the survey, if you tell us which group you fall into, we will show you the respect that you deserve. If you're in group 1, we're not going to neglect you. We're going to come back to you. If you're in group 2, we're going to come back to you, but from an education point of view, to answer questions. We're not going to assume you want to do anything. We're going to help you. And the third group, we won't even call you because you have taken the time to say, thanks, I don't need a call. So if you fill in the survey, you help us to help you. And those who want a call will get one quicker, and those who don't want one won't get one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it up for questions. We did have a lot of people send in questions, and I appreciate that. I have done my best to try to incorporate them into this. I know that I haven't covered off on all of them. So anybody with a question, feel free to unmute yourself and speak. On the left-hand side of your little side panel up the top, you should see a picture of a microphone that will be red. And if you click on that, it'll turn green. Actually, so people don't talk over themselves, put up your hand if you would like to ask a question, and I will unmute you. That's probably better. Okay, I've got a Oh, okay, you've typed your questions. I could hear you, but silent at present. I can't hear you. I hope this was at the beginning. Recording. How can the continual interest rises be managed in retirement without huge impact on living standards? Has someone unmuted themselves? They've got a question. Are you still there, Kevin? And if he is, Catherine, can you unmute Kevin?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
And thank you. Catherine, can you unmute any other branch managers that are in the meeting, please? And if you could all just be quiet so there's not a lot of background noise, that'd help. Kevin, there's a question. How can the continual interest rate rises be managed in retirement without huge impact on living standards? I'm tired of hearing my own voice. I'd like you to answer that.
Mate, I look forward to that happening. Rising interest rates lead to rising prices, lead to rising rents. And you saw that chart that was put up before 1973 to 2050. The best times to own property were in high inflationary times, high interest rates, high prices. Because you see, you lock in your mortgage now, it will never increase. When your property is double, the mortgage will still be the same, it won't double. So with high inflationary times, you just get further and further and further ahead. So I look forward to rising rents and rising inflation. And if you'd like a copy of that chart, Nick will happily send it to you. And you look back on history and you say, yeah, they were the best times for property. Any comments back on that, please?
Does anyone else have a comment you want to make? Okay, I'm trying to read these questions. There's so many, it can be a little bit hard. Okay, someone said, is it a 10 or a 15% capital gains tax? Capital gains tax in superannuation is at the top marginal rate in the first year, which is 15%, reducing to 10% after the first year. I can't imagine why anyone would set up a super fund, buy a property and sell it in a year. Keep it till you're 60 and retired, and there'll be no capital gains tax. Someone said, are you talking about today's super that is offered from companies and businesses? The super I have since early 1980s was different then. They don't offer what I have now. Great question. If you are an older person working for the government and you had a defined benefit super, it might be a little bit more complicated, and it might actually not be in your advantage to roll out of your defined benefits. Don't assume that's the case. You want to find out, talk to them and find out exactly what the defined benefits are, what that super fund is going to give you, and then compare it with what you think you could do with real estate if you managed it yourself. You got to make your own choices in that. Yeah, setup costs, the super fund pays for those. Someone says, can you set up a super fund if you're already retired and have a super fund and allocate a pension fund but no other income? I don't see any problem with that, but you won't be able to borrow money. So it'll be just based on what you've got in your savings that you can roll over. But yeah, look, if you if you're self-funded, there's no, sorry, if you're a self-funded retiree, there's no reason why you want to be letting someone else manage your super. It might be to your advantage, but don't just assume it is. Can I sell my personally held properties to my super fund? Wouldn't we all love to do that? Great question. Catherine, you want to answer that one? Anyone else want to answer it? Who knows what property you can sell to a super fund? Commercial. If you've got a business and you own a commercial property, you can sell your commercial property to your super fund, but no, you can't. You can't transfer the investment property. That'd be so good. I'd love to do that. In inflation, interest rates are higher, so how property prices double in 7 years? I think that's supposed to say in higher inflation, interest rates are also higher. So how do property prices double in 7 years? Kevin, you want to deal with that one?
Yeah, it's easy because it's happening right now. We have high interest rates. What's happening to rents? They're going up. What's happening to prices? They're going up. One of the benefits is that a lot of people get their education out of the media. So right now they're worried about high interest rates. They don't see it as their friend. They should. They're worried about rising property prices. They don't see that that's their friend. And so they're out of the market. So us wise investors see this as a great time to get in. And now for the last 2 or 3 months, the power has swung across to buyers and the builders are on the retreat. So we're getting some fantastic prices. And the benefit of the club is that we're not like a real estate agent who has to get the highest price off you by law. We're not like a real estate agent that has an hour to talk to you in his office and try and put you into one of those lovely properties in the window, or a marketing company that's got one development somewhere that he wants to sell you. We're not 1 hour, we're not 1 hour, we're not 1 day, we're not 1 week, we're months to help you and educate you in making the right decision. And we take benefit in this difficult time because with that education, you can make the right decision and you can buy it. So you add that across our club network, that's a lot of buying strength. And you're in the market, you're getting good deals. Why wouldn't you do it now when the builders are on their knees? It's great.
Exactly.
I love inflation.
Yeah. All right, somebody has asked if there's an age limit to implementing the SMSF strategy because I use the example of 55. I'll tell you why I use 55. It's because it seems to be a number that wakes people up. It's incredible how many people at 55 years of age ask for my help to get their investment started because they realize they haven't got long left. Well, if you haven't started investing by 55, it's going to be pretty difficult to build a retirement income in 10 years. But you can do something and you can work past 65. You could maybe work till you're 70 and you will still give yourself a huge injection. So no, I use the example of 55 because you can pay off a home in under 10 years using the strategy I said tonight, which means by 65, you could potentially go from having just maybe 200,000 or 300,000 in super between you to turning that into a really nice 4-bedroom home, seeing it double and be paid off. And in 10 years, the super fund now has a $1.4 or $1.5 million freehold house that you can cash in via the pension phase part of the fund and not pay tax. So there is no limit. You can set up a self-managed super fund when you're 18 and you can set one up when you're 80 if you want. It's just, it needs to work for you. What happens if one of the 4 people die in this setup? Cool. That would all be determined up front. In their will, they would have instructions for what happened with their superannuation. Don't freak out about the thought of having 4 people share a fund, because I know right now there are people here thinking, well, I wouldn't mind, having a fund with my husband or my wife, but the thought of having the milkman, the postman, the butcher and the baker all get together and just remember your super fund right now is pooled wherever it is. If you're with an industry fund, a retail fund, you're just one member of a big pool. And so your 4 members, every time a deposit goes into the fund, it gets noted by the accountant software what that contribution was. Was it a pre-tax, a post-tax, a salary sacrifice, employer contribution? And who was it for? Which member? So it's all perfectly calculated. If one is retired already, has several properties, nearly all under P&I, with some still under interest only, I have had to sell some to ensure cash flow, plus draw down on my super to assist with subsidising the P&I. How do you change the current properties across into an SFMS and then transfer super and then transfer the super in? Well, we cover that you can't transfer your properties over. And if you're stuck with P&I loans and you're not working, it's going to be pretty hard to get the banks to look at, well, you'd have to go to a different lender and they're not going to look at you. So you either have to make the best of what you've got there, I think, or go back to work just long enough to qualify to get the lenders to allow you to refinance your loans and then quit your job again. Come out of retirement temporarily if that's what you have to do to adjust your strategy. Can you bring new members into an SMSF at any time? Yes, so long as you haven't reached the 4 capacity. So if mum and dad have got, a 15 and a 13-year-old kid, you can set up an SMSF and add them when they're 18. And that forms a really, really, really great way for you to transfer assets to them that you don't need for your retirement. When the SMSF is opened and 2 trustees set up, can you add another 2 trustees at a later date? You actually have to do that because every member must be a trustee. So you can have 1 member today, add another one next year, another one the year after, another one the year after, and as they're added, they become trustees. What if you already have a company, existing investment properties, but are age 60? If you have an existing company, it's got nothing to do with the companies we're talking about here. These are corporate trustee companies. You'd keep them separate. And I won't answer the rest of it because I think I already have. If you purchase a super property or downsize it, yes, great question. Yes, you can look to purchase the property you want to downsize and live in, buy it in your super fund, and you can move into it once you're retired, not before. What is the interest rate for an SMSF loan? Well, it depends if you're doing P&I or interest only, and it also depends if you're doing 70% or 80% LVR. But I can't remember. I think it's about 5.5%, 6%, but don't hold me to that. I think still have to put, yeah, the super fund pays stamp duty. I own a property in Victoria under a trust, which after a change a few years ago attracts around 6 times the land tax. If it wasn't in the trust, presuming an SMSF trust, would that work? The same, also being a trust. No, super trusts are very different. I'm not sure. You've just got to remember, if you have a trust personally, I don't know how they're going to view that in terms of land tax, but in terms of your super fund, it's a isolated, it's on its own. It's an entity on its own. So if it ever had enough land value in there that it was qualified to pay land tax, I don't know, I assume it would, but that'd be a nice problem to have. Do you sell NDIS properties for super funds? I think the question is, can we source really great cash flow properties? And you've used NDIS as an example, and the answer is yes, we do. But in terms of NDIS, it isn't all that it seems. Be very careful. That's all I'm going to say. When you retire, you can move into your property. Can I rent a property owned by my SMSF? No, you cannot live in it or have, it's got to be at arm's length. 4 banks are not giving SMSF loans. No banks are giving SMSF loans, none of them. Commonwealth was the last to cancel it about 4 or 5 years ago. Now they're all non-bank lenders that we go to. But even when the big banks did do SMSF loans, they never competed with the non-bank lenders. They did for normal loans, but not SMSF ones. I actually don't think they want them. It's too hard for them to train staff. You know what banks are like. Their staff don't understand the first thing about normal property investment, let alone SMSFs. I already have an SMSF. Can I set up another one with my children to buy property? Absolutely. You can open a bank account with 20 banks if you want and put $50 in all of them. You can do the same with your super. You don't have to close your employer super fund. You can have this on the side. Can you buy new or secondhand properties in your super fund or just new? You can buy new or secondhand, but you can't improve them, which makes it a problem. And the other issue with secondhand properties is they generally end up costing you a lot more. And you don't want a situation where your super fund is not compliant because the air conditioner broke or something else, the hot water system, and you just had maintenance and so forth. I like new property because it costs less. The costs are very predictable up front. Tenants like them, you get the maximum amount of rent. And by the time the property needs a bit of tender loving care, it's got equity in it and it's already, you will have paid it down in part. So what I'm saying is you don't mind having to repaint a property and spend a little money on it when you know that property has been good to you for the last 10 or 15 years and made you a lot of money. But if you bought a property today and in 6 months' time you're forking out good money after bad, trust me, you'll get a bad attitude. Do we find the properties for customers? Absolutely. As Kevin was saying before, if you go to a real estate agent, by law, they are obliged to get the best price for the seller. And if it's proven that they sold it under what the market was prepared to pay, and the only reason they do that is because the person who was buying it was a friend or family member, they can go to jail for that. So the Investors Club are the only ones who truly look after the buyer. And the Office of Fair Trading have tried to get Kevin to be licensed, and he said, "Don't be stupid. Why would I do that? We're here to protect the consumer. If I get a license, your legislation says no, I have to represent the seller." And you know, they tried to beat their chest and say that they were going to take him to court or whatever. And he said, "Great, I'll see you in court." I might have this slightly wrong, but he said, "Great, I'll see you in court. Love to hear what the judge is going to say when the consumer protection body is bringing the only consumer advocacy group to court and trying to sue us because we're protecting our members." Well, they went away and you never heard from them again. Are we able to access the recording? Yes, as long as it worked. How do you buy a brand new home in super? I thought the super fund couldn't build a brand new home. Aha. Sharon, that's a great question. It has to be a single contract. You can't buy land and build because, as I said before, you can't improve. If you buy a second-hand property and improve it, like you want to put in a new kitchen, you want to, you know, just fix it up. It's a bit of a rundown. You can't do that with a super fund. Equally, you can't buy a block of land and turn around and put a house on that land. If you bought a block of land in a super fund, all you can then do is adjust horses or something. You can't put a property on it. Are there depreciation and other tax benefits? Yep. The super fund, it's all of the tax benefits, you know, are at your top marginal rate. And it's the same with the super fund, which is 15%. There's questions about which banks offer the loans. I'm not sure, I'm not the broker, but we have very, very competent, qualified brokers who will bend over backwards to make sure that you get the best loan. I've researched that an advised minimum to open an SMSF 200. Can you start with 150 combined? You would be surprised how many people are of the misguided belief that the legislation says you've got to have 200,000. No, you can start it with 50,000 or 10,000, whatever you want. It would not be advisable. The question here is, can you start with 150 combined couple? Yes, and that will get you into a property over 500. Can I buy farmland with my super? Of course you can. You just can't live on it or do anything. In terms of working the farmland, I don't know. You need to talk to your accountant about that. Who would own the business? I don't know. I sell real estate and I love real estate. I buy real estate. I teach people how to make money out of real estate. I'm not a farmer, so I shouldn't really even try to address that one. I'm guessing financial advisors will provide information on super funds. Absolutely they will. And they will happily tell you that they can put your money in a managed fund. That's this great managed fund that they've got. And this is what it performed at last year and the year before. And when the stock market crashes, you'll be kicking yourself. I can't give advice, but my opinion is whether or not you set up a self-managed super fund, get out of the stock market. Put your money into real estate, something else. Just anyway. What's the highest LVR an SMSF can go to? We get 90%. Well, do you know, my son is a finance broker and I was speaking to him the other day and he started telling me about he was giving me some interest rates. He's telling me about one lender that will go to 90%. And I said, well, hang on a minute, how does that happen? The legislation says you can't go to 80. And he pulled up the legislation and he read it and goes, I can't see where it says that. And I went, well, I'll be darned. Somebody told me all those years ago that it was a maximum of 80%. And I've been preaching that ever since. And now some lenders come out offering 90%. I've never heard of a lender offering a super fund more than 80% until my son told me the other day. And Tim has made a comment here and said the same. So I would say 90% is absolutely the highest LVR, but I imagine that the interest rate on that would be a lot higher than 80. So it might not be something you want to do. But if you've got a low balance and it's the only way to get into property, well, as I said, it's not what it costs you at the start, it's what it's going to make you at the end that's more important. Yeah, Sandeep, in terms of lenders, if this is something you want to do, these are questions for the brokers. The questions just keep coming. You guys are awesome. How many properties can you buy in super? As many as you can afford. As many as you can afford. What about liquidity tests? Great question. Banks used to say that you had to have, some said 7%, some said 10% of the value of the loan left as liquidity. So if they were loaning you $400,000 toward your purchase, they wanted to know that you had either 7 or 10% of the $400,000 left over in cash at the end. And I had a client a few years ago who was so keen to get this property in his super fund, and he qualified for all but the liquidity. He was so bummed. He said, oh no. So we just said, oh, don't worry about it. Write a one-page commercial loan agreement where you loan your super fund that money. And then the super fund pays you back when it can afford it. Either the super fund can just, the money I think was borrowed against equity in his home, took out a second loan or a third loan, whatever. That was loaned to the super fund, and then all he did was the super fund, I think, just made those repayments. And then as the super fund built up surplus cash, as the trustee, he could just decide, I'm going to pull all of that out and clear my debt in one go. So there's plenty of ways. If you don't have enough money in your super, there's plenty of ways to get it in. You can contribute 3 years with after-tax contributions, $110,000 each member of the fund, and you can prepay 3 years in advance. So if you've got the cash, you can drop $330,000 in super today each. You go, well, where am I going to get that from? Well, that's the problem, isn't it? But if you've got it, or if you've got equity and you might not put that much in, but you can put some in. Yeah, a different bear trust for every property, AJ. Somebody said here, Sandor said, thank you heaps. As usual, the Property Club has been most informative and helpful. Love you guys. It's so nice of you, Sandor. Thank you. Can I use some of my current super funds as a deposit? Yes, that's the whole goal. When you set up a self-managed super fund, if I didn't say this, well, I did, but might not have labeled it, you roll your money from your existing fund over after you've made sure your insurances are all in place. Do you still need to have 7% liquidity now? Good question for the broker. No, I think some of them are still asking for liquidity, but mostly I don't think they are now. Please explain this again, that you can lend money to your super fund. Well, you can lend money to me. You can lend money to your neighbor. You can lend money to anybody. You can lend money to, your best friend's business, and you sign an agreement that says, this is a commercial arrangement. This is what I'm going to get paid. You can do that with your super fund because you and your super fund are not the same, but it has to be a commercial arrangement. You can't lend money to your super fund and charge it 12% interest. So you're profiting and really stealing money from your super fund. But other than that, it can be done. Nothing I say is advice, remember, I'm just telling you what's possible. Can I buy 2 properties with 200,000, one with 20% and another with 10? If the numbers work, subject to the price of the properties, that's something the broker would have to sit down and crunch. And these questions are going to keep coming, which I'm really impressed with. People are asking about running, their SMSFs in parallel with the other. The only reason you don't want to have too many super funds is you're paying fees on all of them. So, in my opinion, you're better off consolidating all of your super into one self-managed super fund, unless there are disadvantages, like you've got a defined benefit fund and you don't want to, leave that. But I'm super, super impressed with the level of questions that you guys have asked, so thank you for that. I apologize in advance if I haven't got to your question. There were so many flying through, it was hard to keep up. But you've got the email address there. Just email us and make a time. If you want to make a time to have a chat with someone, you've either got a property mentor or one will be allocated to you. And if your property mentor doesn't have the expertise in this particular area, and that's nothing, if their skill is in traditional real estate investing, but they haven't delved into the SMSF side of things, I'm happy to get involved and answer any questions that they might not be able to. So thank you all. Look out for the survey. Let us know whether you're 1, 2, or 3. We'll get head office tomorrow to email you a form that you can fill in, that we can then turn around and assess your capacity to borrow. The form will probably have your capacity to borrow both personally and in your super. If you are older and you have no intention of looking at investment properties personally, whether or not you qualified is irrelevant, then we only need your superannuation figures. But if you are someone who just says, look, I am not sure, I just want to make sure that I'm on track to retire wealthy, then fill in all of the form, give us your super details too, and we'll come back to you and tell you everything that's possible. You might qualify to buy a property in Brisbane and capitalize on what's going to happen with the Commonwealth Games, as well as get something in super. And then it's up to you to decide what you want to do. All we're here to do is challenge traditional thinking and mindsets, give you information that you possibly didn't have before so that you can make a fully informed decision, and then support you along the way with zero sales pressure. We're not here to be salespeople. We're here to be educators and mentors. I am absolutely convinced that once you understand what real estate will do for you and your super fund, if you qualify, you will want to do it. And if you don't, there's probably a stumbling block or a misunderstanding or some misconception, or you watched Current Affairs too many times show the Tenant from Hell story and it scared you. Mind you, they never told you there's landlord insurance protection for $250 a year, and if the owner had it, then that story was a non-event, it goes away. So if you're not excited about real estate right now, when the developers are on their knees, when interest rates are high, and we know that is going to drive property prices higher because high interest rates drive rent. And as rent goes up, the yields become more attractive. And people go, wow, look at the yield I can get in property. And then everyone jumps back in. And if you got in before them, then they push your values up. So talk to us and we'll look forward to helping you in any way that we can get on track and enjoy a very comfortable retirement. So thanks for listening. I'll shut the meeting now. And I want you to look out for the next webinar. I'm putting something together which will probably be a 3-part series on the drivers of wealth, talking about leverage, inflation, and compounding, and how those 3 things, if you understand them, they're like keys that will unlock your potential. So look out for that. I'll enjoy doing that one in the near future. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
How's the voice standing up, buddy? I snuck up on you.